Hello and welcome to Pagan Portals Podcast, produced by Moonbooks Publishing and presented by me, Rachel Patterson. If you prefer to listen to audio only, hop on over to Spotify. If you are watching via YouTube and you would like to subscribe, hit the button. If you'd like sneak early previews, then do consider subscribing. I am incredibly pleased to welcome back today Rachel Roberts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me here again.
A woman of many talents, which we will delve into in a short while. I guess, really, if you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Of course, yeah. So I'm from North Wales, born, bred here. Ancestors have been here since before Adam and Eve. And that really kind of one of the main things that creates who I am, I think, because I'm living in the land of dragons and Merlin and with the sea and mountains and all these ancient mythologies that are kind of like, built, into me. And I've had that fascination with them since I was younger. And then throughout my life, I've kind of been drawn to other kind of cultures, just had a natural curiosity for everything else. So I ended up studying history and anthropology and religious studies at university, and then my master's. And then that developed into becoming a writer eventually, I suppose. There is kind of a link there. And just ended up just loving and connecting to the Roman gods and goddesses and mythology. I'm not even quite sure how it happened. I suppose there's some threads there. But, with that, became my first book, Lupa, the She-Wolf of Rome. So my first book was for her because she's been one of the most pivotal deities on my path. And then alongside the writing, I have Wolfram Rising, my wisdom school, which is kind of offering embodied mythology for people. And I call it like holistic history, I suppose, where people are connecting to ancient mythology. But I was always like really struck when people used to say to me, like, history is boring. And I used to be like, no, it's so fascinating. So my idea is to make history really relevant and really modern. So it is exciting because we can see our story in their story. So the Wisdom School came about because I wanted to share, and my audience, my students I already had from my dance school, were loving the meditations I was doing and just wanted to know more about kind of what I was going on about when I just would randomly mention a story or a god of grace. They're like, oh, she's off again, but why is she off again? Like, what is she talking about? So I thought I'd have a school to explain what I'm rabbiting on about. That's basically it, I think.
So from your spiritual point of view, then, would you call yourself a pagan, a witch, or do you have a label? Do you need a label?
No, I personally don't like labels at all because I like to offer myself allowance. This is something that kind of comes from my childhood, that, I grew up in a very strict household where I was told what I should be, and anything else or other than was evil or wrong. So growing up, I very much wanted to give myself allowance to be able to change, to pivot, to be who I was, and that can't be put into a name or a label, or even like, some people kind of, do prefer a witch or priestess or Wiccan or Druid or something. I love bits of them all, but they're not all. I'm not all just that. There's lots of things that I love, and so it can be a bit confusing for people. When they do say, "Oh, oh, who are you and what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, well, okay. If you've got about 6 hours, I could just tip of the iceberg." But I think it's important, to offer ourselves that allowance. That it can be constricting when we say we are just something. For some, it can be a safety net. It provides community. So you're saying, I am this, and it explains a little bit about who you are, but you're always more than just that one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do sometimes. We like the boxes, for want of a better description, because it makes us feel safe or part of something. But I think if, as magical folk, we are on the outside edges, aren't we? So labels don't always fit. Now, the history is interesting because I didn't like history at school. I love it now. But then it's such a big subject, isn't it? And probably the history I studied at school was really boring. And, I pick and choose the bits I like now.
It
but
comes down to the teacher, I think.
That helps as well, doesn't
You
it?
have a good teacher.
But I think perhaps as well it is important in the spiritual ways, the pathways that we walk. History does form a big part of that, doesn't it? With all of the myths and the legends, and particularly with the Roman deities, which I am really looking forward to chatting to you about today. There's a big part of that is history, isn't it? Particularly in the British Isles, because they were here for a long time, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. So the empire expanded, a huge reach. So it's a part of our British history. And so many people over Europe and even beyond Europe have this shared history, which I love. The Romans have it wasn't always the best history, but we have got this shared history, that you can go to a Roman site no matter where you are in Europe and beyond into like Africa and the Middle East. And I love that we have this shared history, kind of have something to bring us together, I suppose.
They did like to expand their empire, don't they?
Yes.
But I guess as well, we wouldn't have, perhaps, particularly in the UK, we wouldn't have been as progressed now as we are without them.
Yeah,
they did improve a lot of things.
Yeah, the toilets and the baths. They were every time they go bathhouse, and they were saying like the natives were kind of like in a hut, not bathing. I was like, I'd be in the baths, like I'd commit to anything to have a warm bath.
Now I know we mentioned this briefly before because we both love the Roman deities, but I think they are quite overshadowed by the Greek deities, and particularly I think within modern paganism. Why is it that the Greek ones are so much more in the forefront than the Romans?
I think it comes down to, from my perspective anyway, that the Greek deities are quite dramatic. And
that's an understatement.
So it's kind of like they're really kind of, they're more extrovert, they kind of like their stories are dramatic and they're more memorable perhaps.
Right, yeah.
But they are very different to the Roman deities. There are some that are similar, and then there are some that are pure Italian and some that are pure Greek. And I kind of think that, it kind of annoys me a little bit. I might go off on a tangent about this.
But carry on.
When people go, oh, well, they're both just the same. And I think, and it bugs me because it's like saying, well, the British gods are just the Norse gods, and I know exactly, but it's like saying that because they're completely different cultures, completely different countries. Italian people must get really annoyed all the time that people are just saying their gods are just Greek, because there are native deities to Italy, and there are similarities, but there are archetypes that they're embodying. Even like comparing British and Roman, they were linked together. They were assimilated because they had similar archetypes, but they are also different. But I think the Greeks kind of get all the attention because the stories and mythology that was left, they did kind of, like Homer, they're writing these bigger epic stories that perhaps the Romans were more kind of, they do have their own mythology, but, their gods were different. They were very elemental. They were very, they didn't have like these relationships, like, because he's cheating all the time, on his wife. And, we can all relate to that story somehow. But, they don't have that with like Jupiter and Juno. In fact, they don't become a partnership until they look at like the Greeks and see what they're doing and go, well, that would be a good idea for us to have something like that is putting forward the idea of marriage, and, we want the Roman people to behave, like.
There is that idea, isn't there, that I hear it quite a lot. Oh, the Roman deities, they just stole them all from the Greeks. How true is that, or untrue?
Seriously,
you can rant.
Go ahead. I would say again that's untrue. Again, it's like, it would be like saying, well, there's no Welsh deities, they just stole them from the Norse. It's that same, kind of a country that lives nearby. Of course, there's going to be influences because they're trading, they're talking to each other. There's a movement of people between land masses that are the same. I mean, you do get this, people say the same about all kind of like from Welsh to Greek to Roman to Norse, all just from the Middle East. Possibly there was this, but we're talking about way, 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 way back, when before people became really nomadic and were moving over into these countries, there probably was this, kind of root for all of these different religions, but these pantheons. But then it becomes very specific to, the country and the land that the people then, stay on and establish themselves on. So like the Roman deities are very much springing up from the locality, like local lakes and local rivers and local volcanoes and things like that. So their landscape becomes their deity. So they can't have just kind of come over. It's not like you can pick up a volcano and take it with you when you move, and then it's the same deity. So I mean, for me, they're completely different pantheons, completely different deities, apart from a few like Apollo, who is just like a moving god who gets everywhere. And I honor them as different. So I mean, I'm a big fan of Minerva and Athena. When I want to talk to them, I talk to them as different deities because they do completely different things, although they have similar kind of like, things that they like.
Yeah, I think the Romans, but Minerva's an interesting one because we both work with Minerva, and I do because of her connection to Sulis over here. Mm-hmm. And the Romans did that a lot, didn't they? They tied is the wrong word, isn't it? They added their Roman deity name to other deities, like Sulis became Sulis Minerva.
Yeah, it's a political move, really. It's a way of integrating and making it easy for people, the countries they went to kind of accept the Roman Empire. It wasn't really, about religion. They were very accepting of any other deities. Like, you could worship who you want as long as you were okay with the emperor being your emperor and being your ultimate authority. So often they will go there and they'd add a name. So the Roman people that were moving to that country would know that deity was who it was to them, and then the people that were in that native country would then be able to find a way to connect to Rome and its empire. They could still kind of show that they were loyal, but without giving up their own deities.
I know when I was doing research, a lot of the archaeological evidence was vows and dedications and petitions from Roman soldiers, but in Britain, to our gods, because that was, I guess, the local deity, and so they connected with it.
Yeah, and it's a way of like honoring where you are as well, but also making sure that you're not upsetting. It's like, if you moved into a house and there was a resident ghost there, you'd probably want to know who they are and talk to them so they didn't mess up your furniture. It's a bit like that. It's kind of like being polite to the land that you're on and the spirits, the Numen or the Genii Loki that are there on that piece of land, and offer if something good has happened, in a particular place, they would thank that place, that place where it happened. And it's edging your bets a little bit as well. Like, I don't know if you've ever made a prayer. You've just gone like, anybody who's listening or everybody, can you help me? Like, anyone,
cover all bases.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a bit like that, I feel sometimes.
Well, that makes sense. It does make sense because the Roman soldiers would have been in a foreign land, and you want to connect with the energies there, which makes perfect sense to me. But we struggle a bit in England with English deities because, unlike the Welsh, who have all of the stories and the legends and the Mabinogi, we have nothing except really what the Romans wrote down and left behind and all of the information for them. So we do have them to thank really for the history of our deities, because they're the only ones that wrote anything down. How exact it was, I guess, is
Yeah, it's from their perspective, isn't it? So again, they're comparing it to what they already know. So you are seeing it from Roman eyes, but we're England is a country of immigrants. It always has been. Even though it's an island, it's been so many different peoples and cultures that have come in. It's like a mixing pot throughout history. It's never, I think even English would be something difficult to define if you're looking at it historically.
No, I think they had a big influence. And I think the fact that they not melded, but the fact that they brought those names together makes perfect sense to me. It does. It seems to be, sensible thing to do. So we mentioned Minerva. Is she one of your key deities?
Yeah, she's one of my, one of the, I mean, I have a council of like, I don't want to quote my favorites, but I don't want to offend anybody else.
I like the term council.
Yeah.
I council. I like that.
It's like King Arthur's round table is kind of how I imagine them. They're all sat around the table, like giving their opinion,
I love it. So who have we got seated round the table?
Minerva's always been there since I was very young. She's one of my like primary kind of guides, and in the Roman pantheon, Mars is there as well. He's been hugely important. He's kind of like my father figure, so he's the one around the table going, you really shouldn't go out at night without, protection. But then I have others there. Apollo's there. We dance and sing together. And then I have Flora, who's helped me professionally. So I have some that kind of help me professionally, some that are there for me personally. So personally, I have my Welsh deities are there. I've chosen not to work, or they've chosen me not to work with them professionally. But they're there for me because they're part of who I am. So Ariandrod and Rhiannon are two that have been there since I was very young. And then there's a mix around the table. Some, like I said, will contribute when I have business decisions, and then, we'll go off and have lunch or whatever when I'm wanting something personal. And then there's some that I just go to for different reasons, just because that's their skill set, I suppose. And, that there's some I would go to if I wanted help with something in particular. And there's some that I have chosen, like I've gone and found them and asked them to join the council. And then some have just turned up, like, I'm here, here's my CV, and I'm like, okay, I accept your help.
I love the description. I was going to ask you how you find them, because quite often they do just find us, don't they? But I love the idea of a council. That's all like their own individual offices with the name tags on. But it's a mixture. Do they all work together nicely? Do they play nicely together?
Yeah, I've never found like any kind of like conflict. Like some people are quite surprised when I mentioned that Jesus is there as well on the council, because I was brought up a Christian,
Okay.
And although I think I love Jesus, but I don't love the church, and I find there's a lot of people that are like that. Like his teachings of love are inspirational, but I have not found the church like that. So I left the church at a quite young age. And I find that they all work together, that they all want to help mankind, that there is, if you're asking for support, they're quite willing to give it. I mean, I know some people have experience of negativity. I'm not quite sure that is a deity, if that's the case, because I think they're beyond kind of these human ways of reacting to things and the ways of working, so I find they all get on, eating biscuits, cups of tea, sat down like, oh, what is she doing? Like, really? Oh, she's done it again.
Okay. Yeah, what's she up to now?
Comparing notes. Like, oh, I need a break.
No, I work with whoever comes to me, and yeah, sometimes it's quite random. But no, I haven't had any punch-ups either. So yeah, I think you have to be open to it, don't you, to whoever. They're usually there for a reason, aren't they? They all bring different things to the round table. I love the round table idea.
Definitely. I think that we can be kind of very, sometimes we can be conditional about things, like I'm having this and I want this and I want that person. Whereas actually I believe in a higher kind of energy and knowledge that kind of knows more than me, because I'm stuck in this human brain, and they know what I need, and they're beyond kind of like the ways that I as a human can perceive and conclude. I can make decisions about things, but they always know a little bit more. So I kind of think, oh, okay, if you kind of I know best, but also perhaps you know a little bit more. So kind of,
it's the difference between what you want and what you need, isn't it? They aren't always both the same thing.
no. I think that we know what we want, but it's always 10% of what is possible.
Yeah.
So they can see how much more we can do and what we can offer, and what can happen.
Do you work with any of the ancient Roman traditions, ways of worshipping? Because I know they had quite specific temples and ways of working with deities. Do you bring any of those ancient traditions into your more modern ways of working?
I have to be honest, I don't. The reason
No, that it was a question. Just
the reason being is that very much with the ancient Roman kind of practices, it was certainly in the ones that we have recorded anyway, from the Republic into the Empire, it was a very transactional kind of religion, and there were things involved, like a lot of it was sacrifice. So you would give a sacrifice in order to get something, and when you got that thing, you would then give the sacrifice. Often, like my communications with deities, it actually isn't about, I want this and I'll give you something if you give it to me. I find that a bit arrogant. It's more I'm having a conversation with them. I also connect to them just for the joy of it, because like I said, they are my counsel, my friends, the divine that I love and adore. And like with Apollo, I don't ever really, occasionally I ask for help with some healing, but mostly it's just dancing and singing with him and just being in that joy together. A huge part of also with Roman religion was sacrificing animals. I am a vegan, so
right.
I don't.
That's definitely off the table.
Yeah. Like getting an oxen and putting it on your kitchen table, and it just isn't practical either.
No. I'm not vegan, but I'm not going to do that either. So. No, that's not. No.
But I think that it worked for them at the time, and we are modern people in a modern world, and I think there can be kind of this putting the ancient practices on a pedestal a bit. Like, this is the only way we can do it because some blokes chose to do it 2,000 years ago. And I was like, well, I'm not a 2,000-year-old bloke. I am a modern woman who needs different things, has a different way of living, live and breathing and thinking in this world. So things move forward, they change, they adapt again. So again, it's like labels. It's not getting stuck somewhere. It's having that allowance to adapt and be flexible and to move forward with things.
I think it has to be, doesn't it? I think about the witchcraft that I practice and the spiritual practices I have. They have to be fluid. They have to move with the times. But I work a lot with folk magic. So a lot of it is drawn from history and from way back. But you can tweak it and bring it up into modern times. Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be fluid, I think, to work in today's day and age, any of it.
And it's also just a practical thing sometimes, isn't it?
Okay.
Like looking at some of like the magic formulas of, say, like ancient Roman, that they're requiring like 20, 30 things that you've got to do at a specific time, like standing on one leg and this and that. And they were done like that on purpose so that the majority of people couldn't do it. That religion was in control of a certain people, so the things weren't accessible, the practices weren't accessible, because they were to be done by priests and priestesses alone. And and most people now wouldn't have access to those things and wouldn't be able to do it. So that's why I like to offer things that are are relatable and are easy for us to do now, because life can be so complicated and stressful. Sometimes you just want an easy way to connect. And actually, we have a feeling sometimes that we're not good enough as well, that or we can't do it, or we're not, people often need, a route that is affirming them at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, life is busy and hectic and confusing as it is. Let's make at least our spiritual practices more simple and easy to access. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not very good at standing on one leg anyway. So that's out. Now, something that I read, you mentioned that when you're working on a project or a new book or a creation, you work with a specific plant guide. Now that fascinated me because I love working with plant spirits. I'd never thought about working with one specifically for a specific project. How does that work?
I'm a flower essence practitioner and also a coach. And I've worked with them. I started out working with them personally, although I trained as a flower essence practitioner. Flower essences are one of my kind of main tools that I use for me personally in my business and to connect with the divine as part of my craft, ritual and ceremony. So each plant, each flower, they all have a very specific kind of offer, a contribution, the way they are of service. So there'll be one that will be aligned with not just kind of the healing they can offer, but also the way that they can empower you to do certain things. So to give an example, if I was to be doing a talk, if I was going to deliver a talk to 1,000 people, I might be feeling perhaps a little bit anxious, maybe self-doubt might come up. So I quite like it. I the more people, the better. If there was 2 people, I'd be more scared than 1,000.
I'm terrified beforehand. Once I get on the stage, there's nothing like it, is it? There is that very special feeling, yeah. But I had never thought of working with a plant spirit. That's brilliant.
There's ones that, so if I was in that situation, I would lean on perhaps borage because it's the flower of courage.
Nice.
And also marigold, because marigold is about speaking your truth, about expressing your words and your wisdom, especially when there might be self-doubt, so I would lean on them in that situation. But, there might be ones that might help me in a different situation, other plants that if I was going to be doing something else, they would come forward instead. So I said they all have a unique contribution, just like we do. So we're all good at what we do, our specific thing. And they're the same.
They have personalities, don't they? That's how I always think about it. Each plant has its own personality. But yeah, I love the idea. I mean, I'm assuming, did you have specific ones for each book that you've written?
Yes. So that was very much because I was working, because the essences were aligned with that deity or that theme of the book as well. So, like with Lupa, there's specific ones that align with her theme. So they're kind of like just intuition. But also, it's like we do have a catalogue of what all the essences are. So when you make a essence, what it then does. So I can know, oh, this one is this theme, this one is this theme. But also they'll just pop up even if you've forgotten what that theme is. So with Nupa, like olive and fig, we're coming forward as really powerful ones.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and they were supporting me while I was kind of processing and bringing forth the wisdom that was connected to Lupa, because it was also the same wisdom that is theirs as plants as well. So, I mean, and then it amazed me, like, I remember reading kind of Lupa's story and thinking, oh, why is the fig tree come up 3 times in her story? Then you look at the healing of fig tree, it's completely the same as the healing that Lupa offers. And I wondered, when the story was written, back in ancient Roman times, did they know, or were they just picking up on the healing of fig? Yeah. Or is it just coincidence? Brilliant. Or I think they were picking up on the healing, perhaps even without knowing. That the fig tree was there on purpose because it was helping to facilitate that story or that process. So
how do you connect with them when you are working with them? Do you actually have the plant? Do you work with just the flower essences? Do you take it? Do you meditate with them? How does that connection happen?
Yeah, so I make my flower essences myself. I was taught how to do so. So I have hundreds of bottles of essences, and I will take the formula when I feel like I need it, or I will take so the book I'm currently writing, I will take apple blossom every time I go to writing that book, because I'm holding kind of that, I want that energy present with me, in me. So I will take the essence, so if I'm doing it I'm just doing it in that one situation, I'll just take 2 drops, and essences you normally take orally. But if I was kind of working through something bigger that's lasting longer, I would take it as a formula and do the 3 drops 3 times a day. So I take it and I take three deep breaths and just say, I receive, I receive, I receive. Sometimes I will go on journeys with them. So I will meditate if I want to get more of their wisdom coming through, or if I want them to reveal something to me, I will take myself off on a journey. Although what I have to, I probably shouldn't admit to this, but what I have is I have recorded a journey that I've said, and then I listen to myself, because I can't just take myself somewhere. I have to be guided. But it is a bit surreal listening to yourself saying, "Oh, you should go there."
It's weird, isn't it? It is. No, I'm with you, because I've got too many mind monkeys. If I am going on a journey, if I'm head riding to connect with plant spirits, which is how I do it, it's the having that guiding. Yeah, otherwise my brain's off doing all sorts of other things. No, you've got to do what works, haven't you? You have got to do what works for you. But
Yeah,
I love that idea. I love that idea of working with that. It's another form of support, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And they're all just kind of like, I've heard with deities, with nature, with the plants, all kind of just sat there just waiting for us to ask, and I mean, I've had a few people that have come to me saying, "Oh, well, can I approach this deity? They haven't chosen me. They haven't come to me." And I was like, they're waiting for you to ask, because sometimes it's important on our path about giving ourselves permission and us taking the power back to ourselves. Often that can be your lesson. So actually, they won't come to you. They will wait for you to ask, because that's an important healing or, action that you need to take as part of your journey, in fact.
Now, I noticed you've also been doing some videos on setting up altars, which are fabulous. So if anybody's interested in how to set up altars, just altars in general, really, but you've been doing it for some specific deities as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'm assuming an altar is an important part of your practice.
Yeah, it's a creating sacred space. So often it gives a focus, So again, if you'd have the mind monkeys, like you said, I love that word. It gives you maybe somewhere for the monkeys to play.
Monkey playground.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of giving you a direction, and as you're thinking about it and the things that you can add on it, it's leading you to contemplation perhaps of the themes. So I think the most recent one I put up was about Magna Mater, the Great Mother. So by putting the lions on her altar, you're thinking, oh, why lions? What does that mean for me? What do they represent for me and her? Why is she connected to that? And then it can help you with the imagery as well. So if you were to journey with her, it might help you to visualize the lions. But it just gives you that space, where the rest of the house may be busy. It might be full of other people's stuff or, life stuff. It gives you that place where you can come back to. So, the ancient Romans had this in their household. They would have a household altar that was in the center of their house, and there they would honor the ancestors. They would honor, the spirits of that house as well. And it was there constantly. The fire was always burning, and they would have it somewhere where you would pass, during the day, so that you could just kind of be reminded when you saw it of who you were honoring and who you were kind of with, I suppose.
And now I learned, this is my confession, I learned about the Roman household altar from an episode of Doctor Who. There was a Pompeii episode and they had a household altar and they made an offering to it as they went in the house. And I thought, that's interesting. I'm going to go and research that. Yeah, so that was with thanks to Doctor Who for that. I'm not proud.
What though, on a side note, I'm just going off on a tangent again. It's one of these things that I thought about. Can you imagine in 4,000 years that all that's left is little bits of what's most popular for us? They'll think Doctor Who was our Jupiter, our main deity, and they'll be like, oh, this McDonald's is the temple they all went to, that's
a horrible thought. That's a horrible thought. I'm happy with the Doctor Who, but not so happy with McDonald's as a temple. But you're right, because I think so much of history is taken from the archaeological evidence or little bits that are written down. We've pieced it together, and it's not necessarily the right pieces of the jigsaw in the right place, is it? If we did have a TARDIS, we could go back and see what actually happened. I think we might have to rewrite quite a lot of it.
Yeah, we're just getting a tiny window, aren't we, into the past? But yeah, really want to. Maybe we get a Moonbook's TARDIS. I would love that.
Yeah, come on, universe, we'd like TARDIS. Thank you very much. Now, moving, sort of spreading out from the altar, are there any particular magical tools you... I'm going to the sonic screwdriver now. This is where my brain goes. Are there any specific magical tools that you work with, or do you not?
For me, my primary three things that I use are elderflower essences. I also use... I don't know how you'd put it, but I express myself through words and song and music.
Okay, yeah.
So my tool would is just expression, I suppose. That I'm not kind of a sit quietly and think. Even when I'm sitting quietly and think, I'll just start singing. Or there's specific songs. Again, I'll have songs that kind of match my books or a situation or a day. All my deities have got playlists that I create.
I love that. I'm making notes of all these brilliant ideas. Taking them all down.
Inspired by when I was a teenager, you probably know of her. I was inspired by an author called Elizabeth Chadwick who does medieval novels. And I remember reading one of her blogs that said that for each of her characters in her book, they have a song, or the situations in the book have a song. I remember her saying about William Marshall's song, and it was so sexy, and I was like, oh yes. And I was very inspired by that, and I remembered that. And then I remember thinking about it as I came to kind of work with deities. I would hear a song and I'd be like, oh, this is such the themes of so and so, or this makes me think. So I'd put it into a Spotify playlist, for them. And then I can then go to that playlist if I want to connect with them, or if I want my students to connect to them, and it helps them to understand the themes and the energy, the feel of that deity. I find with Fenrir, who I work with quite a lot, he, really it's heavy metal, that.
Yes, that works.
Power. And it's like that with all of them. They all have their instruments or perhaps their feel of music. And then that brings in, I use dance as well as my tool as a primary tool as well to connect, to move things, to heal, to find my intuition, to get out of thinking brain. Use it for everything and anything.
I think music is very underrated in spiritual practice. I do work with it a lot in ritual and in spell work because it does evoke emotions and memories and feelings, doesn't it? So that makes perfect sense. It does make perfect. I love that they've got playlists. Mine would probably all be from the 80s, but I love it. Brilliant idea. That is because it inspires, doesn't it? And it does. It's opening different senses as well, isn't it, I think? Has your practice changed over time then? Have you... things you used to do you no longer do? Or has it just kept evolving? Or is there a core that's kind of stayed the same?
Yeah, I think I have those central things, which is, nature, music, dance, and journaling. I think it does change as to what I need. So there'll be certain points, say in the winter, I tend to more journaling because I'm more internal. And then I can feel myself in spring. I suddenly want to dance again. I can feel myself almost emerging, and the dance helps me to emerge. And then, perhaps the singing happens more in the summer, when I'm out with the birds and I'm singing back to them and they run away horrified. But, it evolves more on a seasonal basis and how I'm feeling as well, because if something's happening in me that's really tender and vulnerable, often it might come out emotion, it comes out as noises or something, but I don't want to move because I want to hold it. And the flower essences, again, they will change with which ones I need when. Sometimes I don't want the essence. Sometimes I want to actually be with a physical tree and touch and hold the tree rather than work with its essence. So again, it adapts like that. So I think it's changing all the time, and it looks different one week to the next, to be honest.
But that's seasons in general, isn't it? I think that is about having that connection to Mother Nature, isn't it? She changes every day. So it is about having that connection to it and noticing what's going on around you.
Yeah, and we have our own seasons as well. So like I've done less of kind of the dance this year just because my health hasn't allowed it. You know, and you know, the seasons of us, like you might find a tool that you love for a certain period of time when you're going through a certain thing or you're working with a specific deity. You may never use that tool again. It might be specific to that time, a place or thing. You know, and you might move on to something different. So again, it's having that allowance and just being curious, I think, just exploring, finding what works for you and just having allowance that might change. In fact, it probably will change, you know, over time as you grow and you expand and you learn different things.
Now, I'm going to mention wolf, but briefly, because there are so many other things to you other than wolf. I know you work with wolf. I know it's core to your practice, but do you work with other spirit animals?
Yeah. So my two primary ones that I work with are wolf and lions.
Okay.
I mean, I do quite lean to predators. I find them appealing.
No comment.
but you know, it's important though for my path, like because I like as a young girl, I was very timid and quiet and scared of life, scared of people, and you know, if people say knew me as a child and knew me now, they're a completely different person. I've needed that fierce energy to have the courage to come, to grow, to blossom, to be myself. So they've always appealed. But then I have other ones that have turned up throughout my life. Like I remember as a teenager, frog was really present.
Oh,
you know,
I love working with frog.
Yeah, and it was just, but that during that time, that's the one I needed. It doesn't very often come up now. But frog was there, and then you know, pig has also been an animal, like boars,
my favorite.
But yeah, and just that kind of that, you know, they've always felt very motherly to me. Like that pig energy has got that kind of like with her piglets.
Oh yeah.
Somewhere in my mother's attic, I've got a collection of like must be near 100 like pig and piglet teddies because I really went with it. Like I was proper obsessed with pigs. I mean, at the time, I didn't know. I was just obsessed with pigs. There's no reason. Yeah. But looking back now, I think, gosh, I really needed that pig energy. You know. So like now it is mostly wolf and lion. And they kind of come and go, but I mean, bees is one that's been there as well.
Do you think they have a connection to the deities that you work with, or do you think they are just separate? Because there's a few connections there, isn't there?
There is, and I think that often our animal guides can be a hint as to who, which deities are calling us. They're often how a deity will kind of like say, "Hi, I'm here." Or sometimes it'll be an affirmation, like that animal will come by as an affirmation that deity is with you. Or often the animal and the deity will share themes and archetypes as well. You know, so if you're working with one, very often you can kind of, you know, work with the other. Like it just, like the wolves and lions just happen to be connected to my primary deities. I don't think that's coincidence. But you know, sometimes one came first and the other came first. You know, they're all kind of weaves in together.
The web of weird. It's all connected. So do you have any new and exciting projects that you're working on? What's next?
So Pantheon the Romans comes out in January. I'm not doing very well at being patient with that and waiting. It feels so long
Patience,
away.
what's that?
I know. I want it out now. And no, I'm working on the fourth book at the moment. I'm going quite slow with it because I said for health reasons. But yeah, the fourth book is coming as well. I don't know if I can. Can I share?
Yeah, go for it.
So the next book is about Flora, who is another Roman goddess. She's
excited for that
one of my main business allies, I suppose I should say. You know, kind of I've worked with her a lot with the flower essences. And she's one that's been there since the very beginning as well. So I adore her. And she has been quite important for me, healing kind of my wounded sexuality and my wounded femininity. She was the goddess of prostitutes, so she has that kind of link there that has been very important for me during my path working through abuse and things. So I'm excited to share all about her.
Yeah, yes, I think she's a fascinating goddess. The Pantheon book, do you want to just explain what that entails?
Yeah, so that's kind of an introduction to the religion of ancient Rome. I try to look at it from all points of view, although it's a little bit harder for women's point of view because all the sources are written by men. But, I've looked at priests, priestesses, emperors, women, going through childbirth and marriage, what deities were there, what were they doing, how were they helping, how did people practice their religion in ancient Rome, so what were the tools they were using. I then share about the deities, so the principal deities. Obviously, there is hundreds, like in ancient Rome, every the door handle, the keyhole, the hinge, they all had their own goddess or god. So it could be there forever. But the principal ones, I share about them, kind of their origins. Like kind of
them too.
Yeah, and their oranges. A bit about their orange. Oh, I can't say it now.
We've jinxed it now. Totally jinxed
it.
Origins, that's the word.
The background to them.
Yes, that's good.
And then what they evolved into, how they were adapted. And then I also share some kind of modern ways to connect to them. Because I think that's important. How can we do it as a modern person in our everyday lives? Keep it simple.
It's interesting you mentioned emperors because they had a very unusual place in ancient Roman society, didn't they? They were kind of worshipped in a way, didn't they? Some of them actually achieved, as I understand it, almost deity status.
Yeah. So again, it kind of starts out as a political thing, which
good old politics.
With Augustus kind of deifying Julius Caesar, it's giving him validation. It's the same reason why they connect their family to Aeneas, and then through him to his mother Venus. It's kind of to give themselves validation, authority to say these actions that I'm making are okay to do. It starts out like that, and then it keeps happening with the emperors. They will kind of deify the emperor before them, again, just to say, well, if my dad's a god, then I'm kind of semi-divine myself. And it keeps happening. But the cult of the emperor becomes an important thing, within like the army and the citizenship to keep loyalty to, the empire. So it becomes a political tool, really, to keep kind of that ultimate authority. Like I said, you can have whatever deity you want, whatever religion you want, as long as you are, so you can kind of reject Jupiter, even you can reject, Mars and Venus, but the emperor is, you have to.
Top of the pile.
Yeah. It's
no
not conditional.
Question.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the reason why some of what they call the cults, don't become persecuted, because they didn't agree to have the emperor as their ultimate authority. Spiritually, mind, body, and soul, they chose their deity instead, and that's what leads to trouble, not the religions themselves.
It's fascinating. I think it's all fascinating. It has been absolutely brilliant talking to you today. I could talk for hours about the Romans because I find the whole thing just so interesting. Fantastic new books coming out as well. They're definitely on my to-read pile. Where can people find more information about you and what you do?
Start with my website, wolfwomanrising.com. And then from there, as to social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and also YouTube. I put most of my good stuff, but my best stuff on YouTube. Instagram's more if you want to kind of selfies of me, like, here's me doing the washing up kind of thing. But yeah, I'm on just those 3 platforms because it just keeps it easy for me, because my
you
brain
could
can't
spread
take any
yourself
more
all
than,
over the place, couldn't you, with all of the different ones?
Yeah. And then
Brilliant.
if you don't
Brilliant.
like social media, the mailing list as well is a nice way to talk to me in your
Excellent.
emails instead.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rachel. It has been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to the new books coming out.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you to everyone for watching and listening. Catch us next time on Pagan Portal Podcast.
You have been listening to the Pagan Portal Podcast, a Moonbooks Publishing production. For more information, please visit our website.